This episode of the Moviescramble podcast is a spoiler special for Rise of Skywalker. We will be discussing the film in depth right from the very beginning and giving a lot of plot points away from the first, second and third act. So if you haven't seen it, please hit pause now, go away, watch the film and then come back and listen to our chat. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Vietnam!
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Roads? When we're going, we don't need roads.
Snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Batman.
I am your father.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny.
It's okay that we're here.
It's okay that you're here.
It's good.
Does she do that to us?
Welcome everybody back to the Moviescramble podcast. It's a new year, it's a new decade, but unfortunately you're going to put up with the same old patter from us. Now, this is a special episode we're doing. The format's going to be a bit different, and we're going to be discussing Star Wars. John, how the devil are you?
Very well, yes. First week of the new year and all that. Everything is tickety-boo. Half of the people I know are off sick at the moment. But apart from that, everything is grand.
Well, I was going to say, I'm just glad that we're doing a Skype call and I won't catch this off you. Now I remember I work in the same floor as you, and I've probably got as much chance of catching it as you.
Exactly.
And for some special guests with us tonight, you have Mr. Moviescramble himself. Now, for those of you that don't know, Moviescramble started off as a sister site to Moviescramble, and that was started up and created by the one, the only, the big boss man himself. Gareth, how are you doing this evening? And thanks for coming on.
I'm doing great. Thank you for making me sound important. You'll soon realise as you listen to me talk, I'm not that important. But hey, that's cool. I'm doing great. Thank you.
It's good to have you on board. And we also have another Moviescramble writer with us. Now, Graeme, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks for having me along this evening.
I can't think of any bigger Star Wars fans that I know than Gareth and Graeme, and they've kindly volunteered their time tonight to come on and discuss Star Wars with me and John, who, well, I would say I'm a fan of Star Wars, but I wouldn't say I'm a Star Wars fan. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Picking up after The Last Jedi, where Rey is continuing her Jedi training. Kylo Ren is continuing his plans for domination of the galaxy, but the Emperor is back. Long thought dead, he plans to mould Kylo Ren in his own image and take over the galaxy for himself. I really enjoyed this film, and my mate texted me beforehand and said it was getting a lot of bad reviews. Now, I always avoid reviews of a film before I go and see it, but I thought this was a lot of fun. John, what was your initial thoughts when you seen it?
I liked it. I thought it was a very good film for what it was. It's a good Star Wars film, but I can see why so many people are getting a little upset by some of the things that J.J. Abrams has decided to do with it. But that aside, we can get into detail on that. But the film itself was great. It was a good spectacle. It was a good Star Wars film, and it had an ending that everybody should be quite happy with, I would say.
Gareth, you are a massive Star Wars fan, and you controversially do not like Rogue One. Is that correct?
I didn't like it. I've made my peace with it.
What was your thoughts in Rise of the Skywalker, which I do believe you went to the midnight showing?
I did. Graeme and I both went to the midnight showing together, and by the time we came out, it was 20 to 3 in the morning, and by 10 a.m. I was back in the cinema seeing it again. I really liked it the first time. I absolutely loved it on repeat viewing. I don't know if it was just tiredness that meant I liked it, or was it the, oh my God, what's happening, and worried about how the story's going to go, trying to understand and follow it. By the repeat viewing, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a great, it doesn't let up. It's fast, it's an action movie, as you've said, and lots of stuff happens, and there's lots of implications and lots of decisions that, some people could get upset about. But overall, it's a great film. Really enjoyed it.
Graeme, you've seen it more than once, but what was your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thoughts, I was a bit let down. I didn't love it. Second viewing, I enjoyed it a lot more. Star Wars was the first film I saw in the cinema when I was 2. And then coming to the end of that 40-year build-up, yeah, I felt a bit kind of empty, a bit let down coming out after that first viewing.
But you went to see it a second time, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And what do you think now?
And I came out and kind of echoing what John said. It was a really good, a really fun Star Wars film.
John, did you see it twice or just the once?
I've only seen it the once, so I've not been able to find the time to get back in and see it, but I definitely do want to see it, mainly to settle a few doubts and a few issues that I had with it. But yeah, I think it would stand up to second viewing. Well, put it this way, I haven't seen a Star Wars film yet that didn't stand up to second viewing.
Interesting enough.
I would agree with that completely, John. I don't think there is a Star Wars movie that isn't even better the second time around. Rogue One being the perfect example.
Well, interesting enough, I wanted to go and see Rise of the Skywalker for a second time, but I thought I'm going to go and watch all the other films first. I'm just going to watch them in chronological order, no machete order, no order of release, just chronological, and then go back and see Rise of the Skywalker. I got as far as the prequels. I just didn't have the time. But to be saying that, I've watched a film second time. It was maybe the third time I've seen Phantom Menace, and it wasn't as good as I remember. Attack of the Clones wasn't as bad as I remember, but it was still terrible. And Revenge of the Sith was exactly as I remembered. I still have many issues with that film. I've got many issues with all the prequels. I don't have any issues with this film, so I'm quite curious to see what your issues are regarding it.
Well, what I think is it starts off at a certain pace, which is pretty much relentless with the first 45 minutes. It starts off with a huge info dump with the crawl. If you look at the crawl itself, there's probably about half a film there that you could probably get out of the crawl alone when they say, oh, the Emperor's back and this happened and that happened. You're going, whoa, wait, I want to see that.
But isn't that the case of all the Star Wars movies? I mean, I'll stop the Rogue One jokes, but they made an entire film out of crawl before, so I totally take your point. But that's the case of all the movies, right? I mean, of course it's the passage of time and the montage stuff, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
But has there been anything quite as significant in the crawl as, oh my God, the Emperor's back?
I mean, it's funny you should say that, John. One of the things that really bugged me about this film versus any of the other 8 in the series is the opening crawl cuts to space and usually ships flying. And this one cuts to slow motion action. I'm sorry, what other film's ever done that in the Star Wars series? So you're right, 45 minutes of fast-paced action that starts in slow-mo. It kind of irked slightly. I know it's really petty, but it did.
No, you're right. You're totally right. It usually pans down to a ship, usually involved in a battle. You're totally right. I hadn't thought about that at all. Yeah, good point.
Do you know what's funny regarding the crawl? And this is going to sound really stupid in retrospect, and it sounds stupid me saying it. I forgot there was going to be a crawl. And I was kind of sitting there, and then the kind of title came up in the crawl. I got really excited.
You've watched Rogue One too many times.
Well, I think it'd been. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's only been 2 years since the last Star Wars episode, but I think with Solo been in between and stuff. I don't know. It just felt like longer, and I hadn't seen any trailers for this actually. I managed to avoid it all. I went in very fresh regarding it. I actually forgot about the Emperor coming back in the previous film and stuff like that. And when the crawl came up, I got quite excited about seeing a Star Wars film.
The Emperor coming back in the previous film?
Is the Emperor not coming back in Last Jedi?
No, it was at the Star Wars celebration that
he's in the trailer.
I just combined those two events, clearly. I was just creating main film. Crawl.
So, taking it a wee bit further, what did you think about the main characters? Obviously, we have the journey of Rey from foundling to whatever she is now. And obviously there's a whole bunch of other characters who were introduced in this trilogy and obviously returning characters. What did you feel about how they actually progressed them in the third film, and do you think it actually worked?
I think we need more Poe for my liking.
We always need more Poe. Definitely.
Well,
Very, very disappointed that Finn and Poe didn't happen. I think that, to me, especially in Last Jedi, and again in this one, I felt they were trying to find a romantic angle for Finn.
Mhm.
And I think the chemistry genuinely was there with Poe.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I would agree with that completely. I think for Poe, his journey was quite an interesting one. He may not have become the leader that Leia wanted him to be, but I think he became the leader that the Resistance needed. In many ways, he was a bit like Han. He wanted to just get in there and do, and he didn't want to. He wanted to be, I hate to use this, a rebel, and he wanted to just fight and shoot. And you saw all that, you know, his mistakes at the beginning of the Last Jedi and what that caused. And he didn't want to stand up and be the leader, the general that perhaps Leia saw him as being the, you know, the next in line to do. But I think he did become the leader that he had to in the end, and in the end, he absolutely did the right thing.
Yeah. Do you think he did become a leader? If you think about it, for his time in The Last Jedi, he had quite a strong story arc. He went from being this person who didn't really trust authority at all. He wanted to do everything his own way, but he came to realise through obviously his actions and the actions of those around him, especially when they were being pursued across the galaxy, the importance of leadership and the importance of doing things the right way. Now, at the end of The Last Jedi, he was poised to, he had changed, but at the start of Rise of the Skywalker, he'd almost reset back to Force Awakens character. It's almost as if his development just says, we don't want that. We want him to be more of a roguish Han Solo type character.
Well, I make Han Solo comparisons all the time with Poe, but it's a really good challenge. I think if you think about the beginning of the Rise of Skywalker and when Rey comes back to base and the other two are having an argument with her about her off in some damn fool crusade, as opposed to you're meant to be here and fighting, you're the Jedi, you've got all the powers, and why aren't you supporting us? He was, okay, it was more aggressive than just a chat, but he was trying to instill some kind of direction and leadership there.
But I think that I kind of get what John's saying. By the end of The Last Jedi, you were looking at him as the leader, the person that coordinates it, rather than being the leader out there in the field. And then when it came to this film, he's back out there in the field again.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
That's kind of where the majority of my criticisms with with Rise of Skywalker comes from, where I feel that The Last Jedi took characters in a certain direction, and this spun it backwards again.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. It seemed that obviously with the fact that J.J. Abrams returned, and for some bizarre reason that they hadn't plotted out 3 films, which I just do not understand at all, why they buy a property like Star Wars and then launch a trilogy but don't actually plot out 3 films and let them do what they want, and therefore causing changes and a bit of friction and like storylines that they really have to work at in order to get right. It didn't seem quite right to me. But
I would agree with that completely.
Overall, I think they just about got away with it.
I would like to sit down and watch this latest trilogy in a winner, to go through all 3 films and see how they fit together.
For me, I mean, I know I'm perhaps a bit of a fanboy here, but if you think about it, what Star Wars does really well is all of the films, all of the whether the 9 film or the trilogy, whatever you want to call it, it's all about journeys. It's all about people accepting who they are. It's all about finding themselves and so on and so forth. And of all of the 3 main characters, in fact, you could include Kylo in this one as well. They all go on journeys, and I think Poe's is the most disappointing of them all. Finn's got a really interesting arc, I think there should be more to Finn. Rey's got an excellent arc, and Kylo's got a fantastic arc as well. But yeah, Poe's probably Rose Tico as well. But yeah, Poe's really disappointing of the original trilogy mob.
Yes, especially with how strong he was in the first two films, and you kind of like rally behind him. Like I said, it's not I didn't enjoy him in this film. I just felt it was very underutilized. And speaking of kind of character arcs and that, like for me, going into the film, I thought it was going to be all about Rey with Kylo Ren, but I mean, even the name of the film, Ride of the Skywalker, everybody thinks it's going to be JJ saying, well, actually, you know what? She was Luke's daughter all along, but it still swung back round to Kylo Ren and his journey from evil villain to redemption. Even though he was kind of just remaking Return of the Jedi, because that's what J.J. Abrams likes doing, just remaking Star Wars films.
Yeah, see, I don't disagree with the Kylo thing. I disagree with the remaking thing completely.
I don't mean that as a film, just that story arc type thing. You just had like
I think you could
Rey fighting the Emperor and the bad guy becoming the good guy to save her type thing. I'm being a bit kind of.
I know you are, but everything sits in a stanza, right? And all three trilogies have the same beats and have the same shapes, right?
Yeah.
They absolutely do, and you've got a whole pile of things that occur many, many times in all of the films, from Anakin being persuaded and lied to by Sheev Palpatine to then be fearful of the death of his wife, to moving forward and more pawns and more changes and deceit happening, to getting into these films and it's the exact same again. I mean, there's so many things that repeat and you think, I've seen this before. Are they just out of ideas and repeating, making Return of the Jedi again? Or is it they're meant to have these echoes? I mean, there's an interview with George Lucas where he says that these things are meant to repeat. These things are meant to go in cycles. And all three trilogies have the same villain in the last film of the trilogy.
Yeah.
And way beyond that. There's lots of examples, from Luke raising the X-Wing at the end of this one and doing the thing that he couldn't do, but watched his Jedi Master watch Yoda raise it in Empire, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of fan service in this one. I'm comparing it more to like The Last Jedi, which very much did its own thing for the most part. And strangely enough, that's where the biggest criticisms came from a lot of people, where they felt it was too almost independent in a way of Star Wars, quote unquote, lore.
Well, see, I can see what Gareth is saying with the kind of, the echoes of the previous films and the X-Wing thing, also the lightsaber battle in the old Death Star throne room. And I think that's really important to it. I think it worked really well for the most part.
No, that's the thing. I agree. It's like these few things. I was popping for it. I really enjoyed them. Kind of raising the X-Wing, Chewie getting his medal at the end, and things like that. I liked it. But interestingly enough, that seemed to be one of the biggest issues I've seen people having with it. Comparing that with The Last Jedi, where people are saying, "Oh, this isn't my Star Wars," to people saying, "Well, this is my Star Wars, but it's too familiar."
I think it's, when you look at Force Awakens, it was very much a fan service film. In a lot of ways, it really, really brought back, for me anyway, it brought back that feeling that I felt even now when I watch the original trilogy. And then you go to The Last Jedi, and he really did. He blew all my expectations out of the water, and I absolutely loved it. What I struggled with this one is that it did go a little bit go back to fan service, yeah. But even in The Last Jedi, you had moments that were echoes of previous.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the, forget the name of the planet at the end,
Crate.
But Crate, yeah, and the echoes of Hoth.
Yeah, like I said, I never had these kind of issues with it, so to speak. It's I like the fan service in it, and especially when I back and watched the original prequels. Sorry, I watched the prequels again over Christmas. There's a lot of fan service in those films as well. I don't think it's done very well though. It's very shoehorned in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially the bit when like Yoda's talking to Chewie, it just seems to refer to him by name for no reason other than to tell you who it is. But did you think of Chewie getting the medal at the end?
I didn't like it.
See, that's the thing, right? I didn't mind that. I didn't see anything issue with it. But some people went absolutely mental at it.
I wouldn't go that far, but I didn't like it. I mean, it was Han's medal. So it's not even Chewie's medal, it's Han's medal. And how did Maz Kanata know that he was to have it? You've got to assume that off screen, some point Leia said, "Oh, give this to Chewie," by the way. Or what's a really interesting story arc is Maz Kanata. How does she know all these things all the way through the films? Okay, you only see her briefly off screen fighting some unseen, whoever it is, attackers during The Last Jedi in a sort of Skype call, if you like. But other than that, in The Force Awakens, she has all these artifacts. She knows everything, knows everybody, has huge relationships. And she was kind of demoted somewhat in this film. I think to cover off all these aspects, you would end up with a 4 or 5 hour movie, to be fair. But yeah, how did Maz Kanata know that Chewie didn't get a medal? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's necessary.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Gareth, it being like a 4 or 5 hour film, and you said earlier, John, about the kind of the crawl could have been a film in itself. Mm-hmm. You get the impression that Rise of the Skywalker was actually J.J. Abrams' 8 and 9.
Yeah,
that was his two. That was his the final 2 parts of the trilogy.
I did read a rumor when about I saw him being interviewed in Good Morning America 2 days before the film was released in the US, so the day before it was here in the UK, and he somewhere along the lines of the interview said that he'd actually spoken to Kathleen Kennedy to do a Harry Potter for the final and try and get it into 2 movies, and get told resolutely no. So much so that the film that he submitted to the studio was 6 minutes longer than the film that he then saw at the premiere.
Yeah, I've heard the kind of rumoured JJ cut, and he wasn't happy with his final version that was released. Do you know much about that?
Only what I've just said. I don't know if it's true or not. You know what it's like on the internet.
Yeah, I've actually deliberately not looked into it because you don't know what's rumour, what's absolute nonsense. There's no point in it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Why do you think it is that Disney and Lucasfilms have such problems with directors? It's just so they never seem to be totally in sync with them. If you look at it across all of it, across Rogue One and so Last Jedi, obviously they seem to be very pleased with Rian Johnson, but they seem to have backtracked on that. And now, obviously, you're talking about J.J. Abrams not being totally happy with the final product.
That's a fair point. And regarding Disney as well, quite a lot of Marvel directors have kind of walked.
I was about to say that, Simmy. Yeah, completely.
And you look at Weiss and Benioff. Apparently, they were going to do a trilogy, and they've now backed out again.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I think? I have no idea, but it does feel like a large corporate entity, which is, decision by committee, and they have got a brand to try and keep, and they're scared of risk. And that's why I think I loved The Last Jedi so much. I think between that and the poor fan reception of Solo straight after it, they got really nervous and just got very controlling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think it must be hard for a director to come in, because the vast majority of the directors, you look at Abrams, you look at Rian Johnson, they've grown up watching Star Wars, idolising Lucas, and they're going to go in with the Star Wars film they want to make. And that's not necessarily what Disney's going to want to sell.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be initially they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, but then things start to diverge. I mean, you only have to look at Colin Trevorrow as well, who was originally meant to be directing this episode of the Star Wars franchise.
So he was.
He got unceremoniously booted off.
Yes, he did. I'd quite like to have seen an Abrams trilogy. I understand that there's a lot of fan service and weird decisions that people either like or don't like, on the sort of Marmite side. But to the point that we've been making in this conversation is so much is crammed into 9. There is almost a retcon of 8, and Abrams has tried to make his trilogy out of 7 and 9. And if he had just been given the trilogy, it might have been better paced, or, it might have flowed somewhat nicer. But I'm really glad that we got Rian Johnson's Last Jedi.
I don't want to be in a world where The Last Jedi doesn't exist, even if that's at the expense of a more complete and rounded trilogy, because to me The Last Jedi is like one of my top 3 Star Wars movies. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I can't
Yeah.
say if it's my top 3, but I absolutely love it. Yeah.
I totally agree. I think the trilogy would have worked better, if it was Abraham's all the way through. But if that meant sacrificing The Last Jedi, I don't think I would do it.
I mean, they didn't even need to have the same director over the 3 films, but some kind of, as you're saying, John, the fact that they were kind of, they didn't have an idea. Maybe Disney did, and that's a problem. And they went and realised after trying to give people different, I don't know, maybe like with J.J. Abrams, they're like, that's right, here's what we're looking for, you're up for it, great. Ryan Johnson, okay, we'll try this. And then they're like, actually, no, and they kind of try and rein it back in. And as you're saying, maybe like different people or different directors are kind of leaving constantly. And it's the same in the Marvel franchise as well. Scott Derrickson's just recently left Doctor Strange, which I'm very, very upset about. It must. You said it's welcome. It's difficult for a director to come in and establish franchise and try and put a stamp on it.
Yeah, but if you go back to the original trilogy, all 3 of them have got different directors, but they've got one guiding force in Lucas.
Exactly, one guidance force, but it wasn't an established franchise at the time. No, like it was now.
No, I would agree with that, but I wonder how much is director and how much is whoever's writing the script. And I know that Abrams has written quite a bit of this script as well. And I saw on the second watch, I saw that Trevorrow still has writing credits on Rise of Skywalker as well.
Yeah, he's still got a story credit. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a contractual thing. Obviously, if they dump him, he's still got some sort of credit on the movie, I would think. But I think he had input to the story, but he's obviously been very quiet about the whole thing because he just wants to move on in the same way that Ryan Johnson hasn't really been talking about the Star Wars films at all. Not recently anyway, since he's been out promoting his own work. He's mainly been concentrating on that and trying to deflect questions that he's been getting asked in a lot of interviews. He's been very polite about it and everything, but he's been saying, what about, this film? I'm actually trying to punt here rather than raking up over the past.
Yeah, I mean, he was given, or allegedly given, his own trilogy as well.
The Force will be with you. Always.
Right, so obviously the elephant in the room with regards to the film is Carrie Fisher. What did you think of her input into the film? Obviously, I'm saying input, but obviously it was pieces that were cut out of, I think it was the first film, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Force Awakens, that they took a lot of the dialogue from. Yeah.
Both. I mean, some of her actual scenes about never trust a droid, etc., are in the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray. So you can actually go back and watch them and compare.
I thought it was done particularly well. For obviously, they only had maybe about 10-15 minutes worth of footage of her in total. So in order to get any sort of cohesive storyline out of that, I thought it was quite remarkable. And it seemed to fit in quite well. There's a few bits where she seemed to be standing about, she was asked a question and she would just give a look rather than actually answering a question. But obviously that's just down to the fact that they didn't want to try too hard in terms of CG to make her mouth move and things like that. It may not have looked as good as it did. Obviously, it looked very good because it was very natural and she was just kind of painted into scenes. But what do you guys think? Do you think it worked?
It worked.
I was surprised. I was surprised how well it did work, to be fair.
I think it worked really well. I think they did absolutely the best that they could have done with what they had.
And they gave her a very touching send-off as well, I thought, which I thought they were going to do in the last one. And I was surprised it didn't. And I'm like, okay, how are they going to do this? Are they going to just mention it in a crawl? Because that's a terrible, terrible idea. And no, I was very, very pleased that they didn't drop the ball in that aspect.
The crawl was already very busy.
P.S. Princess Leia died and be back to her home planet.
How it turned into a franchise in itself.
The Princess of Alderaan, yeah. I liked the way she died. I think it tied up beautifully with Luke's story in Jedi, where the Force projecting, and this is up for debate, I guess, amongst the four of us. Han appearing in front of Kylo and them having a discussion and and Kylo going, "I know you're just a memory." I sometimes wonder if that was partly Leia's interjection, force projection type stuff going on, which then caused her to pass in the same way that Luke passed when he did his force projection, in the same way that they choose to go to the force when they know that they have done what they needed to do, like Obi-Wan did when he sees the New Hope, when he's battling Vader on the original Death Star, as Yoda does in Return of the Jedi when he sees that Luke has completed his training and so on. So I think it worked very, very well as the sort of natural and fitting passing of a Jedi.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say any better than that.
Yeah, spot on.
What did you think of the increased use of force powers and things like that? There seemed to be an awful lot more and a lot more variety this time in what they could do with the force. I'm thinking in particular of being able to hand lightsabers across to each other using just the force and across great distances.
Force timing each other, yeah.
Yeah.
It bugged me more in The Last Jedi than it did in this one. I think I became accepting of it. I think if I may be wrong here, but I think as you go across all the films, their use of the Force gets greater. And if you go off the film series into the Rebels or Resistance cartoons and everything else, their abilities, they have got other abilities than what you originally saw in that first original trilogy. So it didn't bother me too much.
It didn't bother me at all, but I do think that it's partly to do with the evolution of film itself, because everything's got to be bigger than what came before.
I mean, one of the things I liked is that different Jedi and different Sith have different powers. You know, Palpatine is known for his Force lightning, and we choose that over lightsaber most times. Some of you've seen the prequels most recently, but Obi-Wan was very much a natural character who, never used a blaster, so uncivilized, and was very at one with the world and the environment. And then you look to Anakin or you look to any of the other Jedi, they're all different and have different powers and different abilities. And I think Rey, given we now know her entire family line, she's got some pretty awesome heritage and some pretty awesome powers at her disposal. So it didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, we're not talking Superman 2 here, when he just invents powers out of thin air, when he peels the S off his suit and throws it as a net, and they start shooting lasers from their fingers. I'm like, what's going on here? But it kind of made sense in terms of the plot as well. I mean, they established them transferring the lightsaber at the end and stuff. They set it up earlier when Kylo grabs it with the necklace.
Yes.
And he's holding it, and you kind of think to yourself, well, that's pretty cool. And then they do it later on, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense because we've seen them do it. They're not just shoehorned it in. When I had no idea whatsoever that Rey was going to be Palpatine's daughter until she blew up the ship with the Force lightning. And I went, whoa, is that where they're going to go with this? Because I'm on board.
Yeah, I think that was a great... Well, two things about that. I really thought Chewie was dead for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Right? But it was brilliant because if you look at Palpatine's manipulation of people and the force to the dark side is anger and killing people and all the things that Kylo tried to do to make himself badder, and then she's suddenly killing her friends and all of that stuff. I think it was a great setup of maybe she could go bad and maybe Kylo has to redeem her, which I think would be a nice ending. Because I was watching it, think it could go that way. Yeah, her being a Palpatine worked brilliantly for me, and I'm not going to be I always knew that. I absolutely didn't. But one thing that sticks out and has always stuck in the back of my head, on Starkiller Base in The Force Awakens, when Rey is fighting Kylo and she's just learning to fight, she uses the exact same stance and the same lightsaber jabbing motions as Palpatine does against Yoda in Revenge of the Sith. And at that point, I thought, that's the same as Palpatine. Never did I think she's a Palpatine. I just thought that's the same as Palpatine. And they all have their own fighting styles.
I'd have to go back and watch that again to see that. I would never have noticed that.
I've maybe watched it more than once.
Speaking of
But
Kylo,
believe me, yeah, that's. I remember at the time watching it and thinking, that's like Palpatine.
that's pretty cool. And you like to think that's something, obviously, they've thought about in advance of it. And J.J. Abrams doesn't kind of sitting going, oh, so she is.
Hey Gareth, what did you think of this scene? Oh, she looked like Palpatine. Oh, that's a great idea.
I will just note that here. Ryan, you better mention this in the next film. I'm going to mention the Emperor, mate. Do you know that just shows you, don't make like talk at the crown? I was convinced the Emperor was in the last film. That's how much I just retconned the series in my own head. I'm actually going to be more annoyed at the crown now than I was.
Well, the opening line is the dead speak.
Yeah.
Which is him coming back at that point. I like the fact that he's back. I like that bookend of all three trilogies, as I mentioned before. It's the same villain, and actually, yes, it's the Skywalker saga, but once you've seen it, it's the Palpatine saga. It's all of the people he manipulates. He manages to control almost all of them. He preys on all of their fears, from Rey looking for acceptance and identity, from Kylo wanting to be like his grandfather, and Anakin wanting to prevent the death, having witnessed the death of his mother and wanting to prevent the death of his wife, and therefore causing it. All the way through all of that, it doesn't happen to Rey. She stands up to it. She doesn't turn or she doesn't do any of those things. But it's a Palpatine saga, not a Skywalker saga.
That's a fair point. I mean, it's that kind of ways. It's like the names, the Rise of Skywalker, and it kind of gave me a little bit of the fear when it first came out, because watching Force Awakens, it kept playing up the idea. I'll give you the idea that Rey was going to be Luke's daughter, and I'm like, right, we've already done this, and I know there's a lot of fan service played here as it is, but let's not just remake the entire trilogy in terms of like the plot points. Yeah. And when Ryan Johnson did it, he's like, oh, by the way, your parents were nobody. I'm like, I like this because it's something different. The title for Rise of the Skywalker, I thought, I really hope they're not going to try and go back this way, because that's what fans were expecting. I had no idea it's going to be Palpatine. And you've got kind of a double meaning for the name, because obviously it's the Rise of Skywalker being Kylo Ren and his redemption. Yes. But at the end of the film, Rey takes the name Skywalker, so it relates to her as well.
Yes, completely.
I really like the way that it does, come the end of the film, Rey is the Skywalker that has risen.
Yes.
But going back to what Gareth was saying about, would Rey turn? I never at any point during this film felt she was going to turn. That's one of the issues I have with it.
I never thought she was going to turn based on the fact that it was a Star Wars Disney type film. I never expected that much of a heel turn and her becoming this big villain towards the end. I thought it's going to end all happily. It's the end of a franchise, end of a trilogy, 40 years in the making type idea. But even though I didn't expect it to turn bad, the idea that she could, I was quite on board with.
Yeah, I never expected it. I'm happy with the way it finished up, and it's how I expected it to finish up. But at no point through this film, did I feel that it was ever in any jeopardy, that it was ever going to be questioned. Whereas during The Last Jedi, I did. And it's the same with Kylo. I feel that in this film, he was bad, good. I didn't feel that there was any there were no shades of grey, there was no battle, no internal battle in this film.
Of who, Kylo or Rey?
Either.
So for me, I think Rey is grey. I don't think she is. I'm going to contradict myself here. She's perfect in terms of she ends up ending that continual cycle. I mean, in many ways, the whole thing ends as it began.
Mm-hmm.
Gone full circle, and there's peace in the galaxy, and she looks out over that Tatooine sunset and everything else. But one of the things that stands out for me is that in The Last Jedi, when Luke tries to train her, and she's doing the whole meditation thing on top of a rock on an island, she causes the rocks to shatter and everything's all shuddering, and Luke is absolutely petrified of her, and he says something along the lines of, you went straight to the dark and you didn't stop, or words to that effect. And she's a Palpatine, of course she did. It's the bloodline. But For me, it was about her finding her place in the world and her search for family and acceptance. And she found her family and she got her identity. But actually, she just chose not for bloodlines. She chose for the actions. And her action was to stay good. But for me, the really, really interesting point in all of this was she built her own lightsaber. The past has to die. Bury it. She buried the past within the two lightsabers. She buried Luke and Leia's, and she made her own. And her own lightsaber was yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Not red, not blue, not green, but yellow. And if you look at something like Rebels, the Jedi Sentinels, who are grey Jedi, are the only ones that have got yellow lightsabers in the galaxy. I thought it was a nice touch.
Nice, yep. Didn't realise that.
Let the final battle begin.
For me, one of the best elements of this film was the dramatisation of C-3PO. I thought his sort of mini arc was excellent. The fact that for so many of the films, he's the butt of the joke. He's the one that's told to shut up because he's fluent in over 6 million forms of communication, but he's just annoying in every one that he uses. Whereas here, he actually became something of a bit of a hero by sacrificing himself. And I thought he had one of the most touching moments in the whole film, where he was just about to get reset, and he says, "I just want to see my friends one last time." I just thought that was beautiful. I thought that was absolutely cracking moment. And then you got a wee bit of humour after that when he came back and he didn't remember anything, and he introduced the other small robot as his oldest friend. I just thought that was fantastic.
That was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was done absolutely beautifully. I'd seen the line in the trailer, just taking one last look at my friends, and I thought, oh, this is going to be cheesy as. I thought they did it absolutely brilliantly.
Little nod that I liked is when he went back to the base and he met R2-D2, he went, "Hi, I'm C-3PO, human cyborg relations," exactly as he did in The Phantom Menace. It's the exact same verbatim introduction to when he first met R2.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, a nice beat and repeat, you know.
Yeah.
He was a surprise. I thought, just as I said before, he was a big surprise in terms of the amount of screen time he got compared to previous films, and the fact he was taken more seriously. A nice wee touch I thought was I can't remember the name of the robot that was introduced, the small, that was J.J. Abrams that voiced that.
Yeah.
One of the better cameos as far as
Well, I saw John Williams did a cameo as well. He was a barman.
Who else? Lin-Manuel Miranda was on it. He wrote the song, didn't he, that was playing in the bar that they were in? And he was one of the rebel troopers or something towards the end, I think, at the big celebration.
So what was your thoughts on Han Solo coming back for that dream sequence stroke Force Ghost type like memory?
I wonder if Carrie hadn't died, if it would have been Leia, and I think that the end result was the same. I think that it was about Ben realizing that for all these dark and bad and negative movements and actions and everything else, that he was redeemed and he was forgiven. And I think that's another one of these repeating story arcs.
But it does go back and kind of echo the position they were in when Kylo killed him in Force Awakens. So maybe it was going to be Han. I thought it worked really well. I liked that.
Yeah, I loved it.
I think it might even have been the same dialogue, give or take. I know what I have to do and all that stuff. I think they said that again.
Yeah, it's when it goes to him, "Dad, and he just cuts him off and says, "I know." I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
Right in the feels.
Yep. That's Empire Strikes Back. Thank you. Yep.
Can I just jump back a wee bit?
Of course.
Sorry,
I was going to jump back too. So let's see where you go.
I was going to jump back to Kylo Ren's character arc regarding in contrast with Rey.
Exactly what I was going to say as well. When we were talking about Rey potentially turning dark or whatever.
Yes.
I actually wondered, and I know it's Disney, but I actually wondered if she was going to die and was going to live, and that would have been, in fact, Rise of the Skywalker. It helps, when you know the title of the film. But I then thought to myself, his arc was fantastic. I mean, Han himself said, something about hooky religions and ancient weapons when you go back to A New Hope, and here we have an almost biblical moment where the greatest sacrifice and for another is dying, and it's dying. It's choosing to die through love, and I think it worked perfectly. He did it because he knew that Rey was she in fact the chosen one. I believe she's a Grey Jedi. I believe she's the one that actually brings balance to the Force. None of the pretenders in previous movies, and Kylo knew that, and he was willing to die for it.
Yeah, could be completely spot on. I wouldn't argue with that. And you were saying, kind of, Graham, about how you never really expected Rey to turn bad. Although it probably looks kind of obvious in retrospect, I never saw Kylo turning good at any point. I always thought they were going to just stay at opposite kind of ends. Obviously, they kind of hinted at teaming up in Last Jedi, albeit more of a kind of like dark side team up. I didn't really expect any redemption from Kylo Ren in a way. Obviously, I didn't see him and Palpatine being best buddies, because obviously they were in kind of conflict and something's going to give. I was surprised that Kylo went full good guy. And in a nice way, because I thought it worked. I did like it.
I think I always felt for both Kylo and Rey that their draw to each other was almost stronger than their draw to either the dark side or the light side. And that's the struggle that I saw in The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Are we drawn together, and will we go dark, will we go light? Whereas I felt in this film it was they were much more polarised.
Well, didn't she say it? I mean, there's two things. So they introduced this concept of the dyad. We are a dyad, where there's two, they're both from strong family lines.
Yeah.
And so on. But then didn't she say herself something about, he says, I asked you to join me and you didn't do it, or whatever.
I asked you to take my hand.
Yeah, and you wouldn't do it. And she says, I would have taken Ben's hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you completely. It wasn't about Kylo, it was about Ben. And he had to become Ben for that to be the perfect closure. Simi, you were talking about not seeing him being redeemed at the end, but he wanted to be like his grandfather, and even he was redeemed in the end.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I'm saying in retrospect, kind of looking back a bit, and as I was watching it, I just didn't think that's the way they were going to go with it. I didn't really know what they were going to do. I wasn't really thinking about it. I kind of went in with not really much in the way of expectations. I thought I'd avoid the trailer. Turns out I'd seen it and thought it was Last Jedi. And
which you just loved, by the way. You think it's the best movie, so I mean that's...
Yeah, all 2.5 minutes of it.
Maybe that's fine. Yeah, it's very quick for a Star Wars film, but it ticks all the boxes. And with this, I just wasn't really too sure where it was going to go in terms of that. I mean, it turns out Rey's Palpatine's family and stuff, and this is really interesting. And I was watching it without trying to second guess it or figure what was coming next. I was just enjoying the ride for what it was. What was your thoughts on the kiss between the two of them? I didn't think there was an issue with it when I watched it, but it does seem to be causing a bit of a stushy in the fanboy community. And I had my own issues with it, but not regarding the film, and I'll explain in a minute.
It was a little unnecessary, I thought, because you already see what the bond is between them in life and in death, because they basically gone out of their way to save each other. So a kiss at the end was, it's a movie moment really, but I thought it was a wee bit unnecessary. No, didn't bother me either way, whether it was there or whether it wasn't, but I don't know. I can see why it was there, but I didn't really think it was necessary.
I didn't think it was necessary, but I'll tell you what I liked about it. It reminded me of Romeo and Juliet. And that sort of playing back to classical text, and the whole thing's born in, built in folklore and other great stories, be it Bible or whatever. So yeah, I think it was necessary to keep that. But if it never happened, I wouldn't have cared. I wouldn't have missed it.
Yeah, they didn't need it to solidify their bond. It's been established by this point. It didn't bother me. If I think about the original trilogy, you've got a problematic kiss with Leia and Luke. And then the prequels, you've got the problematic grooming of Anakin by Padme.
This is taking a turn to the dark side, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
If this mission fails, it was all for nothing.
What did you think about the Ewoks? I fucking hated them. I thought that was just one step too far. Obviously, there was going to be some form of a celebration at the end, but I know it was Warwick Davis and Warwick Davis's son who were the Ewoks, but I thought, fucking Ewoks, man, really.
Yeah, I'm not on board with the Ewoks either, John. I'm with you in that one. They didn't really bother me that much, but I was like, I could have done without them.
I liked an Ewok.
Yeah, they managed to cut 7 minutes out of the film. Didn't cut out the Ewoks.
Yeah, but Ewoks are good soft toys, man.
Exactly. That's probably why Ryan Johnson, I would call him Trevorrow, left the franchise. Why put some Ewoks in the films? I can't bother the Ewoks. Put the Ewoks in the film. You'll make the film. Fine, I'll go make Jurassic Park 3 or Jurassic World 3 even.
To be honest with you, John, I'd forgotten Ewoks were in it. So that's how much I think I cared either way. Now you've described the scene, I remember it, but it didn't bother me in the slightest. I mean, yeah, no. Ewoks.
Right. So, favourite moments from the film? This film in particular, what was your favourite moments?
Oh, for me, my two favourite moments were three. I'm going to have my top 3 moments in no particular order, in the order that they happened in the film, I should say.
Four. I've got 4 favourite moments.
I got three. Definitely 3. When Rey blows up his ship with her force lightning, because I'm like, well, this just got real. When Han Solo comes back and gives a wee kind of nod to Empire, I loved that. And Kylo Ren's lightsaber battle at the end, when Rey transports the lightsaber to him, and he kind of grabs it and he kind of gives a kind of shrug, and then just starts slaughtering people. I like that. I love that. I love Adam Driver. I thought he's been absolutely brilliant in these films.
It's been absolutely sensational.
Yes, I would agree.
That's my top 3 moments.
Gareth, what were you?
I'm with Simi on the Force Lightning with Rey, and it being as much a surprise for her as it was for the audience. And yeah, shit got real. I really liked it. In many ways, I think part of me wishes that Chewie had then died at that point, but could you imagine the backlash from the fans post the movie? But it would have been a really nice, this is actually quite dark and things are happening. I quite like that about it. For me, almost every scene where Rey and Kylo were together, I liked, especially when they were fighting, and even at the end of Hexagon, and they were, and they were teaming up. My favorite bit in The Last Jedi is the throne room scene against Snoke.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So this had a couple of them, and when they were in the old Emperor's throne room in the old Death Star 2, those were my favorite scenes.
Yeah, I'd have to echo that. My favourite scene was that the battle in the old throne room. I thought that was spectacular. Just everything to do with the Death Star, and just the fact that there's like 60-foot waves and everything all around it just looks spectacular. And the fight, and then how it went outside and everything as well. I just thought that was absolutely fantastic.
I think
my favourite moment.
Yeah, I think the whole film just looked sensational from beginning to end.
Yeah. I
would really say I've just got a top 1. And it was 3PO taking one last look at his friends. It really got me.
Yeah, can't argue with that. Even though I did. even though I didn't include it in my top 3 as a good moment.
Yeah, none of us included it, but yeah, we won't argue with you. Top 5.
Yeah. In our top 10.
All we've done all this time.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
What do you think's coming next? Do you think they're going to expand some of these characters that have developed in this trilogy? Not the main ones, obviously, because this obviously was a trilogy of trilogies about the Skywalkers, so that's kind of been put to bed. But you've got a whole universe of characters there, which are sort of ripe for exploitation, whether it's across Disney Plus TV franchise or whether it's in the movies. What do you think?
I think
Sorry, Graeme.
I think before Solo, I think there was an opportunity for a Poe Dameron series, movie, whatever. I think the maybe lukewarm response to that might have put paid to it.
Mm-hmm. Possibly, yeah.
But
obviously, there's... Sorry, on you go.
One thing I would like is maybe a bit more Knights of Ren.
Yeah, but doesn't mean they can't come back.
Hey, see what you did there.
I mean, how many people died in Rise of the Skywalker and came back? You know.
I think what's interesting for me, I would like to see another trilogy. Making standalone movies is all right, but if you compare it to Disney's other massive franchise, which obviously is Marvel, you've got all these films that are interconnected to a point, but there's also trilogies within all of them. So you've got the Captain America series or the Iron Man series and ad infinitum. But Marvel has got a much richer comic book history to glean from than the thin Skywalker line. And I think these 9 films have done their job and that's it. I think if they start just making individual films, I for one really, really enjoyed Solo and didn't like Rogue One. I know I'm in the minority of the majority of people in that front. I'm quite disappointed they're not making a second Solo because I want to see more of Darth Maul, frankly.
I really enjoy Solo.
Yeah, that's good to know. I thought I was the minority. I think Disney Plus is going to ruin it for people. I know they're making an Obi-Wan series. That's a shame. That should have been a film, but it's not going to be because of Solo. It's kind of frustrating. They tried to do too much too soon and they got backlash.
I think they're already winding that back because I mean when Disney first purchased it, they were talking about I think a film every year, something like that.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So they're already, backtracking on that because I think they've realised that maybe the audience is a bit more. What's the word? Picky's not quite the word, but we want a Star Wars film to be special. We don't want just churned out one after the other.
I would agree.
They might be a bit more hands-off as well. It might work in the favour of creatives this time rather than producers, that because they're not as tied to the Skywalkers and the fact that they have to sort of protect this brand, they can be a wee bit more easy on them and let these people do whatever they do, because as you say, if it's new characters, people aren't going to get as upset as they seem to have got with this trilogy. Can be a good thing.
I know that a lot of people are upset with the new characters in this trilogy as well. People will just find something to rage about.
Yeah, of course they do, but that's just the way of it these days, isn't it? They're going to complain about something.
Should just remake them. Remake the original trilogy. Remake it, all new actors.
Do you know what? As crazy an idea as that sounds, it could happen.
Okay, so if that's us regarding Star Wars, I think it's safe to say we were all fans of this film, but let's just make it official. For me, it's a recommend. John?
Yeah, definitely recommend. Any Star Wars film would be a recommend, but yes. Yeah.
Gareth?
It's a must. Otherwise, what you've been doing, watching the other 8.
Graeme?
I recommend, and not only that, I recommend if you didn't like it the first time, you go and see it a second time.
What an endorsement. That's from a man himself who did not like it that much the first time. But yeah, that's quite unanimous. We're all fans here of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. It's been getting mixed reviews off like the professional critics, but what do they know? They're all just shells for
Didn't they love Last Jedi? Didn't they love Last Jedi?
Yeah, critics love Last Jedi, audiences hated it, and in generalisation terms. And this one, the audiences loved it, but the critics were not fans.
Is that not kind of similar to Jedi? When Jedi came out, it had a very similar reaction.
It'd be interesting to see if the critics are now mirroring the reviews of the films.
Well, these things have
They've got their own trilogies to work on here.
Yeah, exactly.
As it did. Well, that's the first podcast of the new, and you'll say new millennium there, new decade and the new year. I'd like to thank Gareth and Graeme for taking time out of their night to come and speak Star Wars with me and John. Thanks, guys.
You're very welcome.
It's been an absolute
Cheers,
pleasure.
guys.
Excellent. Hopefully we'll get you back in the podcast again in the future. John,
Yeah.
that'll be our Star Wars film at some point, trust us. And John's always a pleasure as usual to podcast with your good self. And have you anything you want to plug before we leave? Anybody?
Check out Moviescramble. would be nice.
Yep, absolutely. Go on. Moviescramble.co.uk, or is it .com these days?
.co.uk.
Yep.
We're not as good looking as the movie guys, but we talk a good game.
Yeah, that goes without saying, really.
John, have you had any emails?
Surprisingly, no. We've still not received a single email on the account, so we're starting off. We're continuing as we go normally. But if anybody does have any requests for anything they want us to look at, to review, just anything at all, you can get us on podcast@moviescramble.co.uk.
Can we record the entire podcast when you actually call the film by the correct name?
What have you calling it?
You've been calling it Rise of the Skywalker. It's called Rise of Skywalker. Do you know what I mean? That's right, Jeff, I do. Yeah.
Right, thanks very much, guys. That was our Star Wars special. Our first special, I may add, and I'm sure it won't be our last. Let us know what you think. You can find us in the social medias at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at Moviescramble. Please get in touch. Thanks very much, and good night.
Good night.
Confronting fear. It's the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny.
If this mission fails, it was all for nothing.
We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
Your journey nears its end.
Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Tickets available now.